I'm grateful for everything that happened in my life because it had to happen in order to make me who I am today. The way I learned it, guilt is I made a mistake. Shame takes it into identity and says, I am a mistake.
Welcome back to Sessions from the Edge. For most of us who spent decades in mid to senior leadership roles, our identity was completely woven into our titles, our outputs, and an always-on performance mindset. When a life-altering chronic diagnosis hits, that corporate playbook completely implodes. It leaves us an ambiguous adult just standing on the razor-thin reality of what I call the knife edge of time. My guest today is down in the trenches, helping high performers navigate the exact coordinates that collapse. And Coach Shawn Michael is the voice behind the publication True North and the Daily Power Boost on Substack. He doesn't trade in toxic positivity and he doesn't sell miracle health cures. He's here to talk about identity sovereignty, the exhaustion of performance addiction, and how to stop treating your health recovery as an all or nothing courtroom trial. Shawn, welcome to Sessions from the Edge.
Thanks for having me.
That's great. So first, what I'd like to do is I'd like to decode the problem. So typically with my framework, I sort of decode the situation, then we align with life, and then we look at what thriving looks like afterwards. So we'll go through those three phases as we carry on in the conversation. So first up, I'd like to decode the problem and just have a think about clarity and identity rupture. So this conversation is aimed at the professionals out there who are trying to manage their career, their teams, and their family, who are privately coming to terms with the new normal of a chronic illness diagnosis. And one more thing, you'll hear me talk about titans instead of people as patients if you've not read my book. And that's because I found this is a positive way to reframe the narrative on chronic illness management. But before we go too far down the rabbit hole, I'd like to unpack performance addiction because you talk about it quite a lot, if that's okay with you, Shawn.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So first, one of the themes that I see going through your podcast, for instance, is an identity hangover. So what is an identity hangover?
The identity hangover is much like an actual hangover. You've been flying high, succeeding, achieving, checking all the boxes, and then you reach it, and then it's like, now what? And you kind of get this gap, like, okay, I did it. What was that for?
Yeah, I get that. I've had that. I've seen it. And secondly, coaches and advocates like us typically have an experience or experiences that we work through, and that's where we find our passion. So for instance, like your concept of an identity hangover, what was your life-changing experience?
Identity implosion.
Okay, tell us more about that.
So I had been navigating through life like most people, checking the boxes, reaching targets, climbing the ladder, but had so much of the wrong, malformed identity that I was living in, wearing masks, the people pleaser, the responsible one, the peacemaker. And I did those well, or even the chameleon. Like I prided myself on being the chameleon. Wherever I could go, I could just blend right in.
Yeah.
And I was just pushing ahead. And I made a decision that changed the entire course of my life.
And what was that?
It was a decision to pursue something that I shouldn't have.
Okay.
That was, it was like trying to kiss a fire. That's the best way I can think of it. Is, it's like, why would you do that?
Yeah, why would you? Yeah.
And so on the other side of that, I sat there thinking my whole life is over. A marriage of 13 years flushed down the toilet. And I had no hope. And stood on the edge of the cliff thinking I should just end it.
Wow.
But through the amazing love and support of my wife and getting involved in a community that supported me and held me to the truth, to be honest with myself and with them in a very structured, protected container, bit by bit, I clawed my way out of the pit that I had dug. And went back through all the years of everything that had happened that I had never dealt with. Spent 3 years in license, with a licensed therapist, 12-step groups, going deep down to the deepest levels of who I thought I was or who I thought I was supposed to be. And then learning, as I mentioned before, about neurolinguistic programming, and from one of the masters who's not with us anymore, Steve Andreas, and the idea of self-concept of who do you believe you are. And we often think it's fixed. It's just my personality. It's just how I am. That's just who I am. But I really appreciated the way Steve detailed, like, it is not fixed. You can change the picture. And so that was revolutionary for me at the time.
And what was revolutionary about it? Like, what were the key things that you sort of brought into your life from that learning?
That it's my book and I get to write the next chapter. And, what happened in the past is a learning. I can take it as a learning experience, and I can leave the pain and the discomfort behind me if I choose to.
Yeah. The choice is the important one, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my mentors actually says, most people are choosing their suffering.
I had a very similar conversation with, you call them paramedics in the US or in the Americas. And it was at a dinner conversation, and I was talking about my book and how I treat life and what the book was about and so on. And she was saying to me that you're absolutely right. There's for them, there's two types of patients they turn up to at the houses. The first type of patient is the one that just wants to go to hospital. They just want to be a patient. They just want to be sick, and they want to be handled and looked after and supported and all that sort of stuff. They don't really want to cure. They don't really want to heal. They just want to be in that state. And then there's the rare, and I'm surprised that it's a rare few who are actually like you and I. You get a major life disruption, and you turn it into something that creates something even bigger and better. And that's when I came up with that whole design, align and thrive concept. Was, that when I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, or when I was diagnosed with severe heart disease, and I've had both of those, they didn't hold me down. It was like, oh crap, that hurt. Now let's move on. What can I do about this? What can I do about life, and how can I change the pathway going forward. And I'm surprised at how few people, like you say, they like to stay in that victim mentality. And that's, like I said earlier, that's why I created the concept of a titan. There's somebody who wants to go ahead and make something of the situation they're in. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. As you were sharing that, and I was thinking of, there's a story. I can't remember, Corey. I can't remember the name, but she was a child in the concentration camps during World War II.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And she told a story about the where they slept was full of fleas. The fleas just ate them up. And they would often complain about the flea. Oh, the fleas are so bad. It's so miserable. Oh, what are we going to do? Corey Ten Boom, my wife just hollered. They later found out that the reason the guards rarely came and bothered them was because of those fleas.
Yeah, right.
So Corey learned to say, thank God for the fleas.
Yeah.
And in my own journey, and I look back at everything that happened to me, and I'm talking stuff that no child should ever have had to experience.
Mm.
And then my own mistakes, my own decisions. I can stand here honestly, Paul, and say I am grateful for everything that happened in my life, because it had to happen in order to make me who I am today. 100%. It empowers me to serve those that I serve better, because I can say, yeah, did that. You want to see my t-shirt? Oh, you think that's bad? Wait till you hear this story. Like, you can't phase me.
No, well, I totally agree with you on that front. Yeah, it's known that I say to people that prostate cancer saved my life. Now, on the one hand, you would think, well, prostate cancer, really? That's not exactly a life-saving event. But in my case, it was, because I had a life before that. I had an executive life, very successful, all the chattels and things that came along with it. And and everything up to then was fantastic, except for the fact that I was driving myself into the ground. I had high stress levels. I was running a large engineering team. The family constraints. I traveled regularly and still did through my time as a CEO. And, I'm talking travel out into the Pacific every 2 weeks to some other country other than home. It got so bad at some stage that my wife came and met me for breakfast out at the Brisbane airport here at the international airport, just so we could catch up in between me going from Papua New Guinea to Fiji. And so when that life-shattering event came along, all of a sudden the handbrake came on. I had to drop a whole lot of weight. I had to stop smoking. I had to stop drinking. I had to, stop eating all the hotel food. So, pardon me. So I dropped the Australian equivalent of 20 kilos. So that's quite a bit of weight. I don't know what that is in pounds, but it's those moments.
It's a fair amount of weight, like you said.
Yeah, it's 2.2 pounds to the kilo. So something like that. Anyway,
like 8 or 9 pounds.
That's something like that. Is that, or it's the other way around? I can't remember which. But anyway, it's quite a bit. And so, I went from over 100 kilos to now back to the low 80s, and I've been able to keep that since then. But what I'm getting at is that you've got to embrace those moments, because you can't do anything about it. You've got it, right? It's incurable. It's well, in heart disease case it is. It's irreversible in heart disease case. I can't get rid of it. I can't change it. I can reduce it in terms of its impact, and I can make something out of it. And that's what we're doing here. But they are quite significant events, and you've got to take it on that positive side. Otherwise, it's going to kill you, literally. But I'd like to move along because I see we've got a nice crowd there. Hello, Katie, and I think this is Alan and Peter and Boris and Danielle, or Daniel, sorry. Your publication, your Substack publication, is titled True North. So there's a reason, I'm sure. So would you mind sharing us what the name is all about?
Because I believe every one of us has an internal compass. But because, we are clouded over with the things that have happened to us, or as you said, we're push. We're not paying attention to science. We're basically running ourselves into the ground. Yeah. As you shared that, I could totally see that. Like I was pushing myself beyond what I should. I wasn't taking care of myself. I didn't know how to sit still for like 5 seconds. Like I had to get up and do something. And, I was overweight, out of, everything. And I call that, life gives you the feather, the brick, the 2x4, and the Mack truck.
Right. Okay. So explain to us what each of those are. They're quite good in metaphors, but
so when we're misaligned, we're following the wrong path. We're not dealing with the things that we need to deal with. We're not being true to ourselves. Life will give us a feather, like, hello, like, really, you want to do that? Like, you should stop, probably. Like, if we ignore that, and often we do, a brick comes. Well, a brick, yeah, that could hurt, but you can dodge a brick, right? You can totally dodge a brick. And so we often dodge the brick. If we still don't listen and change and do something, a 2x4, that's a lot harder to dodge.
It is, yep.
Again, if we continue to not listen and not at least make a small shift and start on the right path, the Mack truck's coming. And it's a lot harder to dodge a Mack truck. And perfect. I feel like that was my life. I ignored the feather, I ignored the brick, I ignored the 2x4, and I got ran over by a Mack truck. But it made me realize that to listen to my internal voice, my internal compass, to open the channels so that I could see where my true north is. That what I thought was my guidance system was not, but that I did have it. I just have to align with it and strip away, as you said, the hype, the hustle, all of the stuff that's so common in personal development or in life. Those are all important. They're all valuable, but we got to get the foundation clear first, in my opinion, that I've learned. And I had a guest on my show. He said, teenage rock star or music star, 6 foot tall wall of trophies, standing in front of it, just going, what? Like, what was this for? And realizing he was like holding the walls up, the building was collapsing. And he realized the best thing I could do was just let it all fall, so that I could go back to the foundation,
find a true north,
rebuild it, find true north, and actually build something stable, solid.
And my life. Was part of that migrating south, because to go north, you went south.
Yes, that actually was part of the process. One, it changed my personal health habits. I got more active. I got made better food choices. And of course, you put better fuel in the engine, everything works better.
Absolutely.
It's sunny most days, so I'm more active, going out and getting sunshine, taking walks, learning to slow down. The thing that I thought was so important really isn't. And to focus on the things that are, like family and enjoying this moment right now, because it's truly the only thing I really have.
Well, it's all we all have. It's a thing I call the knife edge of time. So if you think about it, you're only living in this moment, this exact moment, not the future, not the past. You can speculate about that one and you can reflect on that one, but this is the only one. This millisecond is the only one you're actually doing stuff in, the only one you're actually taking action in. And so the knife edge of time is a really important moment in time. So just putting that in context, though, for those listening, Shawn used to live in California, but he's one of these global citizens who decided to try something else. So he now lives in Guatemala and has done for many years, I take it. Is that correct?
Going on 12 years this August.
There you go. Many people dream about it, and here's somebody who's actually done it. Fantastic. So your audio work on the Daily Power Boost is great. I mean, I don't know how you keep it up, to be honest. I struggle to do just the stuff that I do once a week in notes and posts and these sessions from the edge. But I really liked the episode you did in April that was titled "The Relapse Isn't the Problem." And it connected me with so deeply, because I went from being an international CEO to a patient with a severe heart disease diagnosis. As a result, the internal courtroom, as you call it, wouldn't let me accept the new normal of the diagnosis. And as I said before, it literally nearly killed me. I was standing under a thing in Fiji, a tree in Fiji called a betel nut tree. And it's this big shady thing. And I was literally looking at my phone data in between a meeting with some minister and some other thing, and my phone data was just peaking off in terms of wearables, the medical staff was just peaking off the Richter scale. And it turns out, when I got back to Australia and did tests and things later on that week, that I was basically crashing. So my heart health, when I went and did medical tests, my heart health had gone from about 65%. So as a CEO with all those stresses, that's an acceptable sort of fair to midland range. But it had gone from there down to crashing below 40%. So if you looked at the graph, I basically had, I think at the time it was about October in the year, and I was going to be dead by Christmas. And so I really had to throw everything out then. So that's where it caught my reflection in terms of your internal courtroom. For someone navigating a major life crisis like a long-term health condition, how does the internal courtroom prosecution transform data into a life-threatening sentence of self-doubt?
I would say we get so used to hearing the prosecutor in that courtroom that we start to believe that it's 100% true. And there's a quote from Dale Carnegie in How to Win Friends and Influence People that's coming to mind right now.
Right, book.
And
Yes.
he says, if you're content with your life, why change? And I would take that as like truly content. Like, is your life really aligned? Is it really at 3 a.m.? Can you wake up and not go, oh God, I shouldn't have done that, or I need to do this? Or can you literally sit in front of your life and go, I'm very happy. Everything's good. I'm where I'm supposed to be. Things are aligned. So he says, why change if you are there? I don't think many people can say they are there. Because even though I feel quite content with my life, with my wife and my son in Guatemala, and actually this week we're packing up because we're moving this at the end of the month.
Oh, okay.
So everything's in disarray, but I still feel quite content because I'm focusing on the now. I'm focusing on the things that are important.
Mm.
But, I still want better. That's partly why I'm moving. Is actually, we talked about planning to move, and there was a police raid 2 hours from my house. Apparently, there was a whole criminal organization operating out of that house. And I'm like, okay, we picked a good time to move. And of course, I realize I'm not going to be immune from it in another location. It could happen anywhere. But, I want to make a better life for my family. I want to make a better life for others, which is why I write on True North, why I share a daily power boost, why I speak on my Monday mind shift, and actually why I developed an AI infrastructure to help coaches better support those they work with between sessions, because the coach and the client meet once a week, once every other week. What happens when you're back standing underneath a tree and life hits you like a Mack truck? And so the other part of Dale's quote was, if you're not, why not experiment? Try something different.
Mm.
And so I've learned that the relapse, the courtroom wants to judge you guilty, send you to jail, whatever. But that's the old identity prosecuting you. When you're moving into a new identity, the old identity will fight with everything it has to keep you where you were.
Mm.
It's what I've learned is it's the way it operates. It's held the throne for so long.
Yeah.
It doesn't want to let it go.
No. I've got similar. I call it an inner critic, and I actually Mo Gaudet is somebody I follow quite a lot, and he suggested you give it a name in his book Solve for Happy, and so I did. Mine's called Charlie. And so whenever although Charlie woke me up this morning at 3:00 and I was doing database design and he wouldn't let go. So I kept doing it. Like you say, it's now what, 8:30 or something in the morning. And so I've already been at it for 5.5 hours. So I think I'll sleep well tonight. But yeah, that inner critic just keeps at us, doesn't it? It just keeps coming and doesn't
And
give
it
up.
will. And like you said, by naming it, I love the old quote, name it to tame it.
Yeah, I've not heard that one. That's a good one.
And what I've learned to do with my inner critic is like, yeah, that's nice, whatever.
I do the same. It's like, yeah, right, thanks. Let's talk about this tomorrow. I want to sleep.
Right. That's not relevant now. Like, objection. the courtroom metaphor.
Yeah, that's the way. So a little earlier, you shared that you went through a rather intense season of strain where you drifted entirely from your own grounding rituals. And what you haven't mentioned, though, and what I'm not querying you about is what it was. But in your podcast, you talk about that secondary layer of shame. Can you tell us what that secondary layer of shame is and how we can avoid it?
The way I see it, like we can feel the guilt, and I distinguish guilt from shame, right? The way I learned it, guilt is I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Shame takes it into identity and says, I am a mistake. And that was something I learned in my life, right? I used, oh, you're such a klutz. You're such a klutz. Instead of just saying, oh, you're still kind of klutzy, you're acting klutzy. I took it on. Like, I'm a klutz. Like, I drop things, I spill things. That's just who I am. It is what it is. I mean, first date with my wife, I spilled spaghetti sauce on my shirt, felt totally embarrassed. It's the one thing that really endeared us. So, here we are 33 years later.
Yeah.
But we can, the secondary shame that I see is you feel shame for feeling shame. Like, I shouldn't feel that way. It's, it starts to dig the roots in deeper, which makes it harder to take it out later on. So I think we have to confront, just like the inner critic, we have to confront it and reframe it, right? Own our mistakes, own our errors, own where we screwed it up. But it's not who we are, right? One thing I learned in neurolinguistic programming was people are not their behaviors, right? And each of us in any moment is just doing the best we know how with the currently available resources. That was life-changing for me because I just thought that was my lot in life. Like, I was the funny guy at the party, but I was the nerd that people went to when they needed tech support. But I didn't get invited to a lot of social events because I was kind of the nerd, the geek, and
Yeah. Oh, that's social life, I suppose, and it's not what makes or breaks us, that's for sure. So you draw a sharp line between accountability and prosecution when we're talking about, this secondary layer of shame and the internal courtroom and all that sort of thing. When a Titan's building a functional health team, so I spend a lot of time talking about functional health. So that's that cross-discipline approach to healthcare personally. So instead of just looking at the medical side, you're looking at the medical side, you're looking at the psychosocial side, and you're looking at the spiritual side, the body, all of it. So when a Titan's building a functional health team, and say they're working alongside a naturopath or a psychologist or a family carer, how would you suggest they construct a support network that mirrors more of a peer level connection instead of an external system of surveillance?
For myself, it's again, it's kind of like the experiment thing. It was testing. I learned that when I want to bring someone into that trusted circle, test with a small release that's not going to hit so hard. And, in phased levels, like, okay, that passed, now I can release more. It's kind of like, I think of it like the dam, right? You can't just open the gates all at once. They have to open it a little at a time to let the right flow out. And it's part growth, because I was working with an accountability partner, and we had built a really strong bond and had held each other's to really high standards. And we both said it directly. We actually told him, and I often suggest this, like, find that person you can trust with your deepest, darkest side, story, whatever, or your biggest battle you're dealing with, and give them permission to check in with you. And when I say check in with you, I don't mean simply like, how are you today, Paul? It's more like, Paul, what are you struggling with these days? And I even do that with my friends. That's something I've adopted, is like to really care about other humans at a level that accountability kind of comes naturally. I learned this because I had a friend. We were talking after his marriage fell apart, and I said, "I'll be honest, brother. I saw the signs." He looked straight at me, Paul, and he's like, "How come you didn't say something?" He's like, "Maybe if I'd realized it sooner, I could have saved it." And maybe he could have.
Yeah.
That was a wake-up call, like, to really build the people around you that that you can trust, because I was in a confidential space that had very strict guidelines about whatever is shared in this circle is not to leave the circle under only one circumstance, right? That's the standard. If someone is threatening to hurt themselves or others, yes, that is at least in the US, that's a reportable thing. It has to be reported.
Yeah.
But outside of that, nothing leaves the room. And I had somebody in that room break confidentiality. And as part of my forgiveness learning journey, I was like saying hi to him when I saw him, like trying to be friendly. I let it go. Like, okay, yeah, that sucked. But I'm going to be a good forgiving kind of person. I'm going to forgive him because it's not my burden to carry.
Yeah.
And he would just kind of, and a really wise pastor at the church said, "Shawn, you don't have to be friendly with him. No. Forgiveness does not mean leaving the door open so they can come in and rob you again. You can lock that sucker down tight and keep them out." So I think it's very, very important to build at least that one person beside you, a friend, a peer, a professional, that you don't have to worry about what you need to share at any point, because they're supporting you. They will call you out if necessary, which that's not easy. Because my buddy, when he did call me out, I went, "Oh, I know I asked for that, but wow, I wasn't ready for it."
And is there a distinction between, so just then I was thinking, well, does it have to be at arm's length? Should these people be in that professional sphere, or can it be your carer if the relationship is there? For instance, you've got a marriage that's been around for 35 years, and so have I. So I'm guessing that you and your wife are very close confidants, life partners, all that sort of thing. So is there any distinction between those two, or it doesn't matter as long as there's that connection, whether it's professional or personal?
Yeah, I don't, it doesn't, like, it works, like you said, with my wife. She is my confidant. She knows me at my deepest levels. And I like the word intimacy, because I learned it means into me you see.
Oh, there you go. You learn something new every day.
And so for me, it's the person that I can say, "You know what, I'm really having a hard time today and I don't know what to do." And that they're there. Sometimes it's just to listen, because that's all you need. When I did a book study on nonviolent communication, there was a wonderful story about a little girl who was telling the story to the principal. And the principal was getting a little impatient because she had other things to do. And she said, "Alice, is there something you need from me?" "No, Mrs. Jones, I just needed you to listen." Sometimes we just need to be heard. We don't need somebody to jump in and try to fix it or try to make it feel better. Sometimes I've learned we just need to be in the presence of another human being who we can feel that they can listen to us, and they're not going, "Oh my God," or like, "Oh, what? Huh? Like, I can't believe it." I think there's a great power in someone who can be that person for you,
Mm.
regardless of whether it's, a partner, a professional caregiver at some level,
Coach, like yourself.
coach,
Yeah.
whatever. It's a very personal choice, I think. You have to, like I said, you have to test the water, or do your own evaluation in some way to say, yes, this is the person I can be that with.
You're on. Good. I'd like to take a minute to talk about leadership back on that concept again, because it isn't an abstract deck. I mean, leadership is a self-concept that radiates out to people, isn't it? And you've observed, and you're being observed by the team because they read your identity and self-concept before they read a strategy. So, for instance, if you're, well, the question I have for you is that if we identify a threat like managing a chronic illness, how does an adult professional show up to lead? Because, at the same time, behind the scenes, they're dealing with a change of identity, and it's a shattering change of identity.
And I would say, as a leader facing a challenge like that, it doesn't, being vulnerable, I think that's a word that we use a lot. We hear a lot in leadership and other places, and authenticity. It doesn't mean emotional vomiting, right? I learned that the hard way. I emotionally vomited, and it's like, okay, that blew up in my face. But it's being honest. Like, you know what? I know everybody's ready for this product launch. I'm not all here today. I've been dealing with a lot personally. And again, your level of disclosure is your comfort level and the room you're in, right? I've seen leaders in front of teams, they can get down into deeper levels. Other ones, it's like, look, I'm just not all here today. So, Paul, can you take the meeting today? Because I'm just going to sit here and stand by.
Mm-hmm. Great answer. That's a great answer. Sometimes it's hard in practice, having gone through that myself. Thankfully, I actually just pulled myself out of the situation, so just handed in the CEO role. But yeah, it must be difficult if you stay in the position and pursue that. That's why I explored that just a little. So now I'd like to move towards thriving beyond survival. So this is about meaning, legacy, and reinvention. Because like we talked about much earlier, a chronic illness or a major life disruption can be either of two things. It can either be a crash and burn, or it can be a thing to work through and then grow from the experience. So I'd like to talk from that perspective. Pardon me. So you teach that real power isn't something a leader forces or pushes through, that it's something they learn to stand in. But once a professional moves past the clinical panic and after their diagnosis and stabilizes their lifestyle, how would you suggest they give themselves permission to be good at life again without a sense of impending doom? Because, like for my case, for instance, everything's gone. All the chattels, the lifestyle that you had, all those things are gone. So how do you work through that?
One bite at a time, the same way you eat an elephant.
You're full of analogies and metaphors, aren't you? It's great. I love it.
It's kind of my thing, it's kind of like my special sauce. Big Mac has the special sauce. That's my special sauce. Because I find that they make heady concepts more real, right? You highlighted a very valid point. Like, everybody talks, they want authenticity and vulnerability. And, when you're in a power position of leadership and you're dealing with something, as you've shared, that's life changing, and it's not in your control, right? You could have a flare up at any moment. And even at the top, there's still other eyes on you. There's shareholders, there's board members, and they're like, oh, we got to get him out of here. Like, he can't handle this. Like, he's overwhelmed. Like, look at him. What if he has a heart attack right here in the boardroom when we're having a meeting? And I applaud you, Paul, for realizing that it was time to
Thank you.
release and move on, because I think too many people try to hold on to that old identity. Like, I'm the CEO of this company. It's the old, captain goes down with the ship. Right? It's like, we all have to look at it and say, I want to stay here. Yes, I have this chronic condition or other life-changing thing that follows me no matter where I go. I can't, no matter what I can do, I cannot leave it behind. And I understand more than you know. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, fair enough.
About burdens that you cannot put down, you cannot shed, no matter what you do. But as we said, you've got to face it on the knife edge of time in each moment. And you have to honestly evaluate, look in the mirror and say, okay, what can I do right here, right now to move forward? One small step. I think of when my son was learning to walk, right? How babies learn to walk. They take one step at a time, and then they stretch and maybe they fall down and they get back up and they do it again. And we kind of forget that. Like, we face challenges and we get knocked down and we just get stuck, knocked down. And one of my favorite Japanese sayings is nanakaroki ya oki. In English, it's fall 7, get up 8. So if you have the strength, you've got to get up and take that next step. Get that one done, then you can. Because I think we get stuck, Paul, when we're like, how am I going to do this? But that's 50 meters down the road.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to get to the next 30 minutes in what's going on?
And that's, I think, a big part of that too is keeping that internal courtroom, the internal critic, out of the situation, because they'll keep wanting to worry about what's in the future, pardon me, as well as the mistakes you've made in the past.
Right, and that's the warning sign that you're not in the now.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we start redefining success in terms of being a Titan, so we've gone past the event now, where we're moving forward, and we're starting to redefine what's required to move out of survival mode and into reinvention. So how does an individual transition their true north? Because ultimately they had a true north that was true to them back then, and you speak of it in certain levels about those past frames, if you like. But how does somebody? What are the steps, or what's the process, or what's the best guidance for somebody to go from that true north before, and then there's actually a true north in the middle as well when you're going through cancer or heart disease or something? When you're going through a chronic illness diagnosis and treatment and intervention, you've really got to be in the now. So there's that one there, but it's only a short, brief one if you're lucky. That initial where the peak happens. But then after the peak and you get into that reinvention stage, you've got this new true north. So you're actually transitioning through these three identities, these shifts. So how would you suggest people do that from, say, an inside job or a self-worth perspective?
I absolutely agree. Like we got to learn to keep the inner critic, the prosecutor off our backs.
Yeah.
Learn to, one of the coach trainings I went through, learn to be unwithable. insert expletive.
Yeah, I get the one. I've heard that one, yep.
And realize that, and I think that was that's the mission of that I wanted to get is true north changes. Right? My life in California looked one way. Then I moved to New Mexico and I had to adapt. I actually started a church to serve ex-cons, homeless, people trying to get off drugs and alcohol. Did that for a year with zero financial support from anybody else in that community. And so I had to shut it down. Saw lives change, saw massive impacts, but I just couldn't keep it going with the funding I had. And then driving a fifth wheel camper across Mexico with an old school guidebook that gave step by step. No, yeah, everybody's like, why didn't you use Google? It didn't exist. Like back then, there was no Google. And besides that, I didn't have, I had a US phone and a US chip. It did nothing in Mexico at the time.
I started to break in for a second. One of my daughters, just on that, one of my daughters came to me one day and said, Dad, this is when she was a lot younger. She's now a mother of our grandchildren. But she came to me, she said, Dad, how did you guys actually go to events and meetings before you had phones to organize when to meet somebody or where to meet them? So yeah, sorry, I cut you in.
Yeah, totally foreign concept to the younger generations, right? Anyway, so we had this guidebook that had step-by-step instructions to get to the places that you could actually park a full-size pickup and a 25-foot long trailer. And not just park it, but actually navigate it in there. First one, we got totally lost. I went through a Mexican town in the center square where I've got 5 meters clearance I need, vertical clearance, and I've got power lines that are like that. And I'm panicking. So we get to the first destination, finally get there. 2 hours later or whatever, go to the next one. We're using the guidebook. We're following the instructions. The roads, it says turn here at kilometer 62. I'm looking, I'm like, that says kilometer 62. There's nowhere to turn. So I learned, I had to adapt on the fly. And unlike today where Google Maps or whatever will say,
redirect you,
redirect you and, route you around traffic or whatever, or a closure, like I had to do it. So that really taught me, like, you've got to check your compass frequently and, know your destination and be prepared to change direction. I think of it like a pilot. When they take off from the airport, they're having to adjust the compass position. Like they have to adjust that plane constantly, or they're going to end up miles or thousands of kilometers off course. So it's a constant adjustment. It's reevaluating, looking at the instruments. We look at our instruments. We look at our current container that we're in, right? Like you said, if you're having a medical relapse, life is going to be different than it was before that happened. I watched my grandfather do this. he had strokes, and he would rebuild himself, and the stroke would come and knock him back down. 10 years, up and down, up and down, up and down. Taught me determination. That man fought for 10 years that he wasn't done yet.
That's determination for you, and that's something I'm looking down the barrel of, So yeah, I applaud him for sticking at it. You got to have that grit and determination. You really do. So high-performing adults spend, let's say, 40 years treating stillness as wasted time or an economic deficit. I mean, we all do it, let's be honest. But why is a non-dogmatic reset the absolute keystone to surviving when our own raw emotions start dealing with a lifelong medical constraint? So what are your thoughts there?
I have learned to embrace the power of the pause as not just a nice to have, but absolutely critical to stay on course and towards true north. I was the high achiever, always driving forward, thinking like, oh, I can't sit for 5 seconds because that's a waste of time. That's a waste of money. That's a waste of my energy, my expertise, or whatever. Living in Latin America has really cemented this. And actually, the first year we were here, we were living in a Mayan village with the simplest conditions, right? The shower was a pipe sticking out of the ground. There was jungle behind me with snakes and ants that would carry your house away. And washing clothes on a stone. But it let me reset down to the simpler things. And one of the routines we had in Belize, because of the temperatures, it's very, very hot and humid. So it's up at sunrise, do the hardest work first. 10 o'clock, work stops. Siesta time. Get out of the sun, get under a nice thatched roof, lay in a hammock, take a nap. Something totally foreign to me for most of my life. I think I spent most of my childhood like, what? I'm not taking a nap. I'm big boy now. As an adult living in Latin America, I'm like, embrace the nap.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Embrace the nap.
Or embrace the moment of silence. No phone, no music, just me with my thoughts.
Yeah.
Noticing them. And it's not even grabbing a hold of my thoughts. It's noticing them, letting things roll, and looking at things from a different angle. I could never do that when I was going nonstop and I saw every second that I wasn't moving as a waste. So it's really helped me like refocus everything about my life, and it's opened up more creative solutions to things I face.
So standing on the knife edge of time right now in this moment, what is the single uncompromised piece of functional health intelligence you would hand to the people that are listening now who feel completely anonymous and isolated inside their own diagnosis if they're going through a chronic illness?
I want to share, like, this is coming to me right now, even though I don't see them, but I see you, I hear you, I understand you, and I love you. And no matter how, one thing I've learned in my life is no matter how dark the night, the sun always rises. And that we are not meant to do this alone.
No.
Find someone. I've often told people, I've had people who were suicidal, and I said, if you ever think of it, call me.
Mm.
I'm not going to try and talk you out of it, but I'm here. And I've seen lives turned around just by that presence of like, I'm here. I care. Someone cares. I want your listeners to know I care. I don't know you, but I love you.
Mm.
I love you, Paul.
Mm. I love you too, Shawn. Well, on that note, and that's a lovely note and a very poignant topic to end the conversation. Thank you very much, Shawn, for joining me. So Coach Shawn Michael will be spotlighting his content, this interview, for a whole week in a couple of weeks' time once we've edited it. And Shawn and I will do some co-authoring and all those sort of lovely things. So please do join us in a couple of weeks' time when we air this and focus on this interview for an entire week. That'll be the newsletter and the notes and so on. So I look forward to you joining us again in a few weeks' time with the replay. And Shawn, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. And I want to say thank you to everybody watching live or replay, because time is the most precious resource in my book, because it's the one thing we can't save, we can't make more of, and we all get the same. So the fact that people took time out of their day to be here to listen, whether live or in replay, I appreciate it.
And there's Patty saying thank you for the kind thoughts there, Shawn. So Patty is actually another coach, a health coach that helps patients talk to their physicians and so on. So there's a really good course that she does for that. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Shawn, and see you again soon on the next session.
Thank you all.
Time is ticking on the knife edge. Master your formula at paulcobbin.com.